All right, you guys, we are going to talk now about classification and naming because we need to know what makes something a living organism, and we also need to know how we're going to name these scientifically because it's a little different than just calling something a cat or a dog or a bearded dragon. Our Georgia Standards of Excellence include SB4. So, we are moving on to SB4, which is all about classification. SB4 has us looking at the organization of interacting systems within single celled and multi celled organisms. And A has us constructing an argument supported by scientific information to explain patterns in structure and function among clades of organisms, including the origin of eukaryotes by endosymbiosis. Clades should include archaea, bacteria, eukaryotes, fungi, plants, and animals. We also should be able to construct an argument supported by empirical evidence to compare and contrast the characteristics of viruses and living organisms. So, our goals for today is to list the defining characteristics of each major domain. And next week, we're going to talk about kingdoms and then list the defining characteristics of prokaryotes, bacteria, protists, and fungi. So, let's check out what makes something alive.
And characteristics of living things. Why are some objects considered alive and other objects considered not alive? Let's look at the 7 characteristics of living things. The first characteristic of living things is that all living things are composed of cells. Next, living things grow and develop. Living things reproduce and produce offspring. Living things also contain DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. Living things require energy for their daily activities. Living things respond to stimuli. Let's see an example. Living things also have levels of organization. Thanks for watching. Moving Math uploads a new math video, science.
Okay. So, just like what they said, characteristics of living organisms, they have to be able to grow and develop. They have to be able to reproduce without a host cell all on their own. They have to be able to maintain homeostasis. They have to be made of at least one cell, but it could be more cells. They have to go through metabolism, so they have to be able to get energy and use that energy. They have to be able to respond to stimuli, and they have to be able to adapt to things. So if it does not meet all of those characteristics, it is not a living organism. As far as all living organisms, there are three domains that they fall under. They could be archaea, here in the middle. They could be bacteria, this first one, or they could be eukarya. So I want you to think about which one's going to be prokaryotic, which one's going to be eukaryotic. We're going to answer that later. And I want you to realize that we're going to take a quicker, closer look at archaea and bacteria. We'll look more at eukarya in our next video. So, archaea and bacteria, if you guessed that those were our prokaryotes, you were correct. Those kingdoms are prokaryotic only. So, remember, what distinguishes a prokaryotic cell from a eukaryotic cell? Think about it for a minute. If you said a nucleus and membrane-bound organelles, you are correct. Remember that prokaryotes do not have a nucleus and they do not have any membrane-bound organelles. Domain Archaeobacteria contains organisms from kingdom Archaeobacteria. Sorry, domain Archaea contains organisms from kingdom Archaeobacteria. And then domain Bacteria contains the kingdom Eubacteria. That EU at the beginning makes it a true bacteria. So archaea are the oldest life forms on Earth. These are known as extremophiles. So extremophiles are really cool organisms because they love super extreme environments. That's the whole reason why it's got extreme in the name. So extremophiles love to live in places like the Dead Sea, where there's a very, very, very high content of salt, or places like the very bottom of the ocean in the vents, where there's tons and tons of pressure, or places like volcanoes, where it's super, super, super hot. So these extremophiles live in those crazy extreme environments, the ones that are so far out there that humans would never be able to live there. And then we have our bacteria, which is our eubacteria. These are found almost everywhere on Earth. So eubacteria is even found on your skin and inside your body. In fact, there is good bacteria inside your body that you don't want to get rid of. So I want you guys to do a quick search before you come to class and give me some examples of regular bacteria, not archaeobacteria, but eubacteria. And then we have domain eukarya. Domain eukarya contains kingdom Protista, kingdom fungi, kingdom plantae, and kingdom animalia. Why do you think all of these are classified in domain eukarya? What do they all have in common? They all have in common that they are eukaryotic cells. So let's check this video out about those three domains.
Earth has an amazing variety of life. However, all living things found on Earth can be divided into three large domains based on their characteristics. The three domains are bacteria, archaea, and eukarya. Let's take a look at some of the characteristics of each of these three domains. Bacteria and archaea are the two domains made up of only single-cell organisms, also called unicellular. They also contain only prokaryotes, which are organisms that have cells that do not contain a nucleus nor membrane-bound organelles. However, even though they are similar, they're also very different. First, the cell walls of bacteria and archaea are different. Bacteria have cell walls that contain peptidoglycan. Archaea cells do not contain this in cells also have membranes that surround them and allow materials in and out and separate them from their environment. The plasma membrane of archaea uses isoprene chains instead of the fatty acid chain, which is found in bacteria. The enzymes that read the genetic code in archaea are different than the enzymes that read the genetic code in bacteria. To date, no archaea has been found to cause disease in humans, and they are able to survive in extremely harsh environments like hot springs and hydrothermal vents. The domain Eukarya contains a huge variety of living organisms. Eukarya has organisms that are both unicellular or single-celled and multicellular. In addition, the cells of this domain are eukaryotic cells, which means they do contain a nucleus and membrane-bound organelles like a mitochondria. The kingdoms in this domain include protists, fungi, plants, and animals. So in summary, there are three major domains used to classify all organisms on Earth. They are bacteria, archaea, and eukarya. Thanks for watching, and Moo Math up.
All right, guys. So, what we're going to talk about now is how scientists name organisms. So, if you were to look at these organisms, I'm guessing you would call them a lion, a polar bear, and a giraffe. That's what I would call them. Scientists aren't going to give them those names. Scientists around the world are going to call them the following things: Panthera leo, Ursus maritimus, and Giraffa camelopardalis. Because, yes, scientists have to name everything weirdly. The reason why they do this, though, think about why would they speak different languages in their everyday lives and use a specific naming convention for different organisms?
Science. In this video, I'd like to talk about a scientific name, also called binomial nomenclature. If you were to name these animals, you could use the word cat, dog, or frog. If you lived in Germany, you would use cat, Hund, and Frosch. In order to avoid confusion, animals are identified and plants with a scientific name. This system is called binomial nomenclature. These names are important because they allow people throughout the world to communicate about animals. Scientists use international rules to name animals. These naming rules mean that every scientific name is unique. Scientific names are also designed to tell you something about the animal's relationship with other animals. Scientific names may also be descriptive about the animal. Let's dissect a scientific name. A house cat the scientific name is Felis domesticus. The first part describes the genus that a cat belongs to, Felis. It is always capitalized. All species that are thought to be most closely related are placed together in a genus, for example, like these cats. The second part of the scientific name, domesticus, is always lowercase, and it describes the species that is unique to the organisms. Let's look at another example. A dog, Canis lupus familiaris. The genus is Canis, and the species is Lupus familiaris. How about the frog? There are over 5,000 types of frogs, so the scientific name tells you exactly which one you are talking about. The Rana temporaria. The genus is Rana, and temporea is the species. There you go, a scientific name, 2 parts, describes the genus and the species. Thanks for watching, and Moo Math uploads a new math and science video every day. Please.
All right, you guys, that is everything that I have for this video. Hopefully I can get all the little blips out of it in post production, and I will see you guys for our next session coming up pretty soon. I hope you have a fabulous day.